Mike Norvell and Florida State are revamping both the offense and defensive side of the ball. When you go 2-10 and have a disastrous season like that, you're going to have to want to change everything across the board, and that's what they did, including the coaching staff as well. And 2 new coordinators coming in with Tony White, new defensive coordinator, and also to Gus Malzahn, the new offensive coordinator, who will be calling plays on Saturdays. But yeah, there was a lot of high expectations going into the 2024 season. Florida State felt like they brought in a good transfer portal class. Some guys, though, that we found out were going to be project players that you're going to have to develop and probably see more of a significant play from them in their second years, going to guys like Malik Benson, who you brought in from Alabama as a transfer wide receiver that you were going to go ahead and name practically your number 1 wide receiver. Offensive line play didn't help much. Quarterback play didn't help much either. But things just did not work with the inconsistencies with Malik Benson. Then you go over to maybe the edge position. We can name another one. Going to Marvin Jones Jr., which was a major letdown from his play. Florida State has to find guys that can come in and be good, solidified depth pieces, and some that can be an immediate, impactful players. I'm going to give my grade on this overall class so far. Florida State is definitely not done yet, but we'll give a little mid-season, mid-off-season grade of where Florida State stands in its transfer portal class. Let's go look real quick at a handful of some guys that they've brought in so far. Let's start off at the quarterback position, where Florida State made a very early move and getting in contact with Thomas Castellanos, the Boston College quarterback transfer there, who was going to be your projected starter going into the 2025 season when they kick off the year at home against the Crimson Tide and Alabama. You needed to grab that, I think, early on, because then you were starting to get some interest from other players, because once you grab your quarterback, then it starts to trickle down on what you're going to do at the offensive line position too, and what you're wanting to try to do at the wide receiver room, tight end, and of course the running back, where Florida State was able to go in and grab a Deuce Robinson, who was one of the top transfers in the class so far, coming from USC. A big body that Florida State feels like they can take those shots with Gus Malzahn, and Castellanos lining up some things down the sideline, and just a big receiver that can also utilize his legs a little bit too. Kind of not maybe a little bit of what you had with Johnny Wilson almost, but having to find some taller receivers like that with a guy that you have the quarterback who is going to take some shots that you can roll out and utilize his legs too. I think that's a good tandem there as well. You also just brought in Squirrel White coming from Tennessee, who, if you're talking about experience and production, that's exactly what you like. I mean, he's going to be a player that we're probably going to see projected to start in this upcoming season just because of his experience at the SEC level. Very speedy. He's going to fit really nicely in the slot. He's got that explosiveness there. So right now, I really like what they have. Their quarterback matching that with what you have at the wide receiver unit. And I still don't think Florida State has done entirely there. Yes, they do feel high on some of their youngsters as well, that they feel like they can develop and get better now under Tim Harris Jr., moving on from Ron Dugans at the wide receiver room. But a whole revamp there at the wide receiver position because of the letdown that you had there in that unit overall. Way too many drops and inconsistencies there. And it just felt like, too, just some of the route running and just the ways that the unit overall was playing poorly. Yeah, you got to change some things big time there. And I still would not be shocked, though, if they bring in another wide receiver through the transfer portal. Still sticking on the offensive side of the ball through the tight ends. They brought in Marquiston Douglas Biscuit. He makes his return to Tallahassee. I think this is a good addition here. He actually left Kenny Dillingham, who just had a really successful season at Arizona State. But he's coming back to play for Mike Norvell again and is going to be one of your blocking tight ends. But also, too, if you're going back, there'd be some little splash plays from Douglas using his hands, and can be reliable with that as well. Not an easy guy to tackle, too. So Florida State bringing in a guy, yes, his primary duty will be blocking, but he can utilize his hands. And then you match that now with Randy Pittman, who he was previously committed to Florida State during his recruitment at the high school level. He ends up going to play for Gus Malzahn, but he is coming back home to come play for Florida State. And the Seminoles, he's a versatile tight end, a guy that can block, but also can be a passing threat as well. And you can match that well with some of the younger guys that you have with Landon Thomas. And we'll see if Amari Williams stays at that tight end position there as well. And you also brought in an impressive true freshman tight end as well with Lofton coming in. You also revamped. So I think the biggest thing that's going to probably boost up my grade here on what Florida State's done in the transfer portal is the offensive line unit. We knew that this had to have a complete rehaul, and I think you just needed to throw a bomb into it and blow it up and reset all sectors of it. Now under Herb Hand, Florida State's new offensive lines coach, I'm pretty sure he was like, yeah, we're going to do some things differently. And sure enough, they've done that. He's at least finding his new personnel that he would like to bring alongside some of what he already has on the roster. But starting off, you were really happy about landing Gunnar Hansen, who's expected to probably be your left tackle, really big with the experience at the SEC level. You also brought in Micah Pettis at the right tackle position, who is going to definitely be your starter there. Really, really physical body that likes to put your hands on you and dominate you. And he's got a 6'7", 360. Yeah, that sounds good to me. But when I think 3'7", 360, I'm like, ooh, I don't know, like how athletic can he be? What's his athleticism? He's a guy that is athletic with that size, and he can move well, and he likes to hurt you. So I like that pickup there at the right tackle position. Probably, I would say one of the most important ones was going to be at the center position, because Florida State and Marie Smith moving on, it feels like, after like 6 or 7 seasons almost. But Florida State had a really bad problem, and they still kind of do. It's a conversation for another day, but at the center position, they've got to find depth there. They got to find young guys that they can develop that can be 2-3 year starters for them. And they weren't going to have anybody. They did not feel like Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn felt like they weren't comfortable with what they had in its current stable right now. And so they went into the transfer portal and found Wake Forest Luke Pettibon. Dave Clawson, retiring from the position there as head coach at Wake Forest, allowed for this opportunity to happen, and the Seminoles went right at him, and were able to snag him. So big land there for the Seminoles. I think it's one of the most important position groups on the offensive side of the ball, just in communication, the glue, and building the chemistry there at the offensive line room that is much needed. And then you also brought in UCF offensive lineman Adrian Medley, who's going to be competing for a starting spot. He's got a lot of experience under Gus Malzahn in that scheme, so it just makes sense there for him to join back in Tallahassee and have that reunion. Florida State, one of the biggest ones that was highlighted so far on this transfer portal class was James Williams. We're going to the defensive side of the ball now, going to the edge position. This edge position is much needed in adding players that can make a mix of immediate impact, but also to depth. Florida State feels like they can do that with this group that they've hauled in, with James Williams coming from Nebraska, a really quarterback pressure heavy type of player. He wants to be a 3-down defensive end. He also wanted to earn more playing time as well. He came off the bench for Nebraska and Tony White, but there was no shock that he was going to be coming in and joining his former defensive coordinator here in Tallahassee. You've also brought in Deontay McCray from Western Kentucky, who I think with 2 years of eligibility, I like that one because there is development. It allows you some time to work with him to get better. DeMonte Diggs is coming from Coastal Carolina, who I think is just good depth piece overall. And then Jason Jenkins, someone who is going to be competing for a starting spot at Tennessee. The Volunteers, definitely, he was more of a guy that didn't see a whole ton of playing time. He would get out there, yes, but you think of him highly of being more of a pass rusher than anything, and how he fits this personnel at the defensive end room. But I think overall at the defensive end, you wanted to revamp that. It's kind of like what the wide receiver room they're trying to do there as well. But at the defensive end room, you had attrition there with Pat Payne now going to the LSU Tigers. You had Marvin Jones Jr. as well. And then you had a handful of other defensive ends leaving the room, and it was a major letdown last season. I mean, to be honest with you, it was atrocious, and sometimes I wondered if Florida State even had a defensive end room on Saturdays. I mean, I think all of FSU fans as well would agree. It was just piss poor play, and they've got to find some guys that want to go out there and get after it and also have a high motor. And I think that's something Florida State lost when they lost Jared Verse, who's absolutely killing it in his rookie season for the LA Rams, and so is a guy called Braden Fisk as well. And then linebackers, we'll finish off here real quick before I give off this grade. Stephon Thompson came in as a linebacker. He goes all the way back with Tony White to his Syracuse days, tons and tons of experience at the college level. He's going to be competing for a starting spot right off the rip. And then you also brought in 2 more linebackers as of late, Caleb Lally, and then also 2 Elijah Herring. Caleb coming from North Carolina, and then Elijah coming from Memphis. This is actually one of the latest additions to this transfer portal class. I really like this one, Elijah, starting off with him actually because of his experience there and his run game defense. He had a really, really high grade, I think 87, a little bit higher than that actually, of his run grade defense per PFF. So he can get over to the ball and get over there quick, which is great. Florida State needs that, and just tons of experience and versatility overall too. He's just kind of all over the place as a linebacker. And then you've got Caleb Avali, who you feel like you can develop. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. He had a really high recruitment process with Florida State. That relationship there was really strong. That's why it didn't take too long for him once he entered the transfer portal to come straight to Tallahassee, take that visit to the Seminoles, and eventually picking Florida State and going to be playing now under Coach JP, John Papuchis, who was previously Florida State's defensive ends coach and is going to stay special teams coach. So Florida State, let's look at what 247 Sports ranks them at. So LSU is at number 1. Texas Tech is at number 2. Texas Tech throwing money. We're talking millions and millions of dollars at some of these transfers coming in. So they're at that number 2 position. Number 3, Ole Miss. They've found a ton of success through the transfer portal since this whole era has begun. Lane Kiffin, Mike Norvell, a handful of other schools as well throughout the last 4 or 5 years have found a lot of success in bringing some guys in that can be immediate factors as well. And then Auburn, who are doing a kind of what Florida State's going through, doing a whole rehaul of their entire roster as well after a letdown season in 2024 from them and the Tigers. And then Florida State is at number 5, 247 Sports ranking them at the number 5 position. And kind of Florida State being led there by Deuce Robinson, James Williams, some of their offensive lineman hauls as well. And, I think to me, for Florida State, they're not done yet. The Seminoles aren't done yet in what they're wanting to do in the transfer portal. They're still after some guys at the skill position, I think wide receiver, and also 2 at the running back with Rashul Faison. That's one I'm keeping a close eye on. But right now, I'm going to grade Florida State at a B. I pick a B because I still want to see some positions be hit. Well, I just talked about one. I talked about Rashul Faison, who I think would be a nice addition to this running back room. Is Florida State desperate for running back? No. But does Florida State get better? Yes, with the addition of Rashul Faison. And right now, you got to take anything to get better with what we saw from the offensive side of the ball last season. I think that's an upgrade there in that room, and he'd be an immediate playmaking factor for Florida State, and adding that in addition with Thomas Castellanos and what you already have too in that younger running back room. Yes, you have some veterans coming back, but I do think there is going to be attrition after the spring in that running back room, and it's going to get a little bit thinner than what it is right now. And 2, I want to go into the trenches. I got to find someone that can match in there with Daryl Jackson. Yes, it is a new scheme of a 3-3-5. I want to find an experienced player, though, that has shown production at his previous stop. Yes, you have some guys like Daniel Lyons, KJ Sampson as well there, but I want to find an experienced guy through the transfer portal that can come in and can play at a high level with a good motor. And I still think Florida State needs to add there, and I'm sure they will. There's no crazy massive rush right now, and they're going to see what happens once the spring portal window opens and everything like that. There is going to be opportunities to add there. But to me, Florida State, I give them a B. You're able to add in Faison if you do, or another running back. And then 2, really going over to inside the trenches, I think that moves up to a B+, maybe at the fringe of an A. But right now, we'll see what Florida State wants to do overall across both offensively and defensively. Like I said, there has been a lot of additions so far. 16 transfer portal additions. It's been very impressive so far how quickly they've been able to do this, but a lot of work still to be done, and we'll keep a close eye on who they end up grabbing and moving forward and who they're targeting. But if you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the like button down below. Definitely would appreciate it. It helps get this out to more FSU fans. We've seen a ton of growth here on YouTube in the last couple of months, so going to continue to try to stay as consistent as possible for all of you, and it's deeply appreciated. And 2, if you want to stay notified and get alerts to your phone whenever one of these videos drops or breaking news drops, make sure you hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell that's right next to that. So then it will ping you on your phone whenever one of these videos drops. So thank you. Appreciate you for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next video.